Hey, this is Deji.
And Chris.
Welcome to the Lot One podcast. On today's episode, we talk with Emily Best, the CEO and founder of Seed&Spark, about crowdfunding and finding distribution for your independent film. So let's get into that one. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Lot One podcast. Today, our special guest is Emily Best. For those people who don't know who you are, Emily, can you give us the elevator pitch, a little bit of a backstory?
Sure. I am the founder and CEO of Seed&Spark, which is now the #1 crowdfunding platform in the world for independent film and storytelling in general. I also started another company inside Seed&Spark called Film Forward, which leverages the best short cinema from around the world to build experiential learning that replaces like boring, crappy corporate training videos. Film Forward is really a way for us to build a new revenue stream for short films that hasn't existed before. I am a filmmaker also and produced a feature documentary that's actually coming out kind of right now called RATIFIED, about the 100-year fight for gender equality in the United States Constitution. And I am the co-founder, I guess. We don't even really know what to call ourselves, of a brand new organization called Motherboard, which is about bending the arc of technology towards collective good.
So you're not very busy, seems like. Just a couple things. Well, I guess why don't we start with Seed&Spark? How did that idea come about? Why did you decide to do this?
I had been appointed to produce a feature film. I had never produced a feature film before, but I had been producing theater. And the friends of mine that I was making this with, we had done theater together. And they were like, "You'll just produce a feature." Those things are not the same. We had this sort of one narrow window over the summer where everybody was free to shoot this movie, and we had not raised enough money to be able to go do it. And so, this is 2010. So Kickstarter and Indiegogo are brand new, and a lot of artists, but particularly artists like in New York and LA, had heard of it. But none of the people that we knew who had money had heard of it, right? So we're talking like Instagram is brand spanking new. Twitter is brand spanking new. These like newfangled crowdfunding platforms were as kind of nascent as were most of the social media platforms. And so we weren't like, oh, we'll just do a Kickstarter, because at that time it sort of felt like asking for a pile of money to go make a movie. And we didn't really understand quite how to wrap our heads around that. And so I remember we got together in my friend's apartment. What we really want to do is like community source. And what is one thing that everyone that we know is familiar with? You know what they're familiar with? Because we were all in our like late 20s, early 30s, wedding registries. Everybody has dealt with a wedding registry up until now. And so my roommate at the time was like a WordPress web designer. So she helped me build a little WordPress website. And one of the pages was our wedding registry. So we listed all of the individual items we needed: the camera rental, the coffee and craft services, bug spray and sunscreen, because we were going to be in Maine in the summer. We just like listed all of the things that we could think of and their requisite values, and put a little PayPal link in the bottom, which I did myself. That's the most technical I've ever been in all my life. And then we sent it, there were like 8 of us working on this movie. We just sent it to everybody we knew. What happened was really interesting, is that once we identified the things that we needed, people in our communities started identifying what most interested them. So it was a nurse who sent us a first aid kit. My cousin, Timmy, who was working in a sports warehouse in Tahoe, drop shipped us a case of bug spray, a case of sunscreen, because like he could do that really easily. And then friends of ours who had just made movies called us up and were like, "I don't see you have anything here for your like base camp, your pop tent, your chairs and tables for craft services." And I was like, "Oh my God, you're right. I need that." Right. And so we also started getting offers for things that we didn't know we needed. And then another really amazing thing happened because we started doing outreach very specifically into the community. A coffee shop local to where we were shooting offered us 60 pounds of coffee, which took care of our whole shoot. A local used car salesman was like, "Can I read the script?" And he read the script and he's like, "These are the cars I think your main characters drive." And we totally agreed with him. And he gave them to us for 6 weeks for free.
Wow.
So
Okay.
all of a sudden, we thought we needed to raise $20,000 in cash. We ended up raising $23,000 in cash, and then literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans and gifts. I could go on. Locations, goods, services, right? And it really turned the movie into something that looked very expensive all of a sudden, right? And we one of my very best friends, who at the time was living in Colorado, called me because of the crowdfunding campaign. And she's like, "I need to come work on this movie." And she's a brilliant producer. She had been doing a lot of commercial production. She was a much more experienced producer than I was. And I was like, "Please, there's nothing I need more." Right. So it activated our community in this really like palpable way. And once we, raised the money, all of the people who had said no to us, so all the sales agents we had gone to, and they told us nobody cares about movies about women friendships, the distributors that we had talked to that were like, if you could put some lesbian erotica in it, we could sell it. Like all of those people, no, seriously, they didn't even mean lesbian erotica for lesbians. They literally meant, if you could make this movie about women friendships palatable for a male audience, then we might do something with it.
What?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
They will still say that to your face. Like, I'm sorry, that stuff to your face. Like that was, we're not past that spot, even though this was now, 12, 13 years ago, 14. Yeah. It was a long time ago. Anyway, so all of those folks saw, we had 448 people support this crowdfunding campaign that was not on a crowdfunding website. And really it was a crowdsourcing campaign. Yeah. And so the people who had contributed stuff that meant something to them, right? They had allocated their money or they had sent a literal resource. And so they really felt invested in the film. And everywhere we showed it on the festival tours, we had lines down the block and around the corner because people were bringing their friends. And then all of a sudden, those sales agents and distributors were like, "Wait, how many email addresses do you have?" We're like, "About 500. They're like, "How many theatrical markets does that represent?" And all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, if I have the audience data, I have the power in the conversation."
Yeah.
And it was like a wake-up call. And then I had creators from all over the country reaching out to me to ask how we did what we did. And it wasn't long after that somebody said, "This is a platform. This is something that you need to turn into something." And that was really the inception, was my own experience. And I have used it since. I've crowdfunded, I don't know, 3 or 4 more times. I just crowdfunded my feature film in June. So it's very fresh for me. And, it started because I needed it. And then when I realized what it could do for me, I was like, we need to do this for everyone. Especially for filmmakers who would not otherwise get a shot, for filmmakers who were walking into rooms and getting told that by virtue of who they are in the world, their stories are not valuable. Like that was really, for me, I was like, I want every filmmaker who's ever had the experience of being told their story is like not marketable, because what they actually mean is like, you're not a white man. I want them to be able to like kick ass using this platform to prove that they don't need anybody to tell them yes or no. And so that was the genesis. And here we are 12 years, 13, we're about to turn, no, 12. We're about to turn 12. As the number one crowdfunding platform in the world, we pass through, I don't know, 3 to 5 times more money every month to filmmakers than Kickstarter does.
Wow, that's crazy. What an inception story. It's funny you bring up like from like theater to this, because I started in theater because my family started in theater, and my sister was a producer for children's theater. And during the pandemic, because the children's theater got shut down, like everything else did, they were like, what is something we could do? This was later in the pandemic, right? Like a year after like the shutdown and stuff. What could we do to still keep like the students in in the courses, still learning some form of acting, still being able to do things. And they're like, hey, let's do a film. So my sister, as a theater producer from stage management, was thrown into now film producer. And so she came to me and she's like, please help me. Help me figure this out. And I was like, I got you. Don't worry. Like, so
it's
it's
not
just
the same.
no,
It's not the
no,
same.
not at all. But she, like, to this day, she's like, I don't want to touch film at all. She's like, I'm over it. I don't want to see that film ever again. She has such a distaste for it. But I'm like, I understand. I get it. You got burnt because it's not what you do. So I
say
get
that
it, you know?
every time I make a movie, and
You're like,
every time. Like at some point, I'm like, why does anybody do this? We make it and it comes out, and we're like, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Like I sat with an audience who watched Ratified on Thursday night, and the crowd was like so moved and so activated, and I was like, aha, yes, the 8.5 years it took to make this film culminated in being worth it right here in this room.
The Lot One podcast is brought to you by the Tourist Hat Coffee Company. You know what keeps me running on those long film sets, Stagey?
What's that, Chris?
Coffee. And you know what's the worst thing ever?
A swift kick in the pants.
No, bad coffee. So that's why I choose Tourist Hat Coffee Company's high quality coffee beans. Their artisan roasted single origin coffee and handcrafted blends are so much better than those stale stuff you get from those other brands.
Yeah, those things are bad.
Tourist Hat Coffee Company's coffee is artisan roasted, micro roasted, single origin, and their small batch roaster that handcrafts their blends to maximize peak freshness upon delivery. Family owned and operated. What more could you ask for from a coffee company, Deji?
I literally can't think of anything else.
If you're still not sold, a portion of each purchase goes towards contributing to some of their favorite nonprofit organizations, such as Animation Dance Community, Seeds of Hope International, and Beautiful Gate Orphanage.
These guys are good.
Make Tourist Hat Coffee Company your new go-to quality coffee choice with our exclusive offer for you, the Lot One podcast listener.
Oh, listen up, guys.
First-time customers can use the code LOT1BOGO at checkout to receive one free bag of coffee when you buy two. That's right, Deji, buy two, get one free.
Whoa.
So head on over to touristhatcoffeecompany.com and use promo code LOT1BOGO at checkout. Again, that is LOT1 BOGO at checkout. Whether you work in the film industry or not and want a delicious cup of coffee, this is the perfect time to stock up on your favorite blends of coffee or try something new. I know I'll be brewing Tourist Hat on my sets moving forward, Deji. Again, that's promo code LOT1 BOGO, LOT1 BOGO at checkout to claim your buy two, get one free. Terms and conditions apply. Tourist Hat, coffee that fuels your adventure.
How does Seed&Spark work?
Oh, sure. I mean, I feel like your audience is probably relatively familiar with how crowdfunding platforms work. So I can talk a little bit about how we're different. And I would say there's a few key differences structurally and then sort of business model wise. So number one is we teach a workshop all over the country all year long called Crowdfunding to Build Independence. It's also on our YouTube channel. And we really try to encourage filmmakers to attend that workshop before they crowdfund because it is going to answer 99% of the questions that they bring to us. And it is also going to give them information that they didn't even know to ask for. Because a really good crowdfunding campaign does not start the day it's launched. It starts a good 2 months beforehand, right? And it is all in the prep and in the crowd building that you're doing. So we really want people to be informed. When you do start building out your project on Seed&Spark, we have a real live crowdfunding expert that reviews every single project that comes through and gives feedback on the pitch video, on the story, on the incentives, on the outreach plan, especially if you're shooting for a 5-figure goal or a 6-figure goal, we're going to really work with you on your outreach plan to make sure you're actually ready to raise that kind of money. Because we really want everyone to be successful. And that's really important. And so it's a 2-step process, right? You submit for feedback, You get some time to process that feedback, you resubmit, and then you get approved for launch. That is why we have an 80% campaign success rate compared to, I think the next closest platform is like 37%. And so what I say to all filmmakers is do not submit your draft and think you are done. You need at least a week to metabolize feedback, and please don't submit the pitch video that you think is done. Like, do not submit to us the color corrected sound design version of your pitch video, because we will have feedback and it will be right. And I say this as somebody, I am considered one of the like global experts on film crowdfunding. I made a pitch video for my film and I sent it to Gab and I was like, no holds barred, give me all the feedback. And she was totally right about all of it. So I just want to say, like, you need that outside perspective on the pitch video. Unlike other platforms, Seed&Spark does not take a portion of what you raise. So most of the platforms take between 5 and 9% of what you raise. We take tips from backers. So we try to do a good job of articulating why you might want to keep Seed&Spark alive. But we don't take a portion of your money. There are credit card processing fees. We can't do anything about those. Would love to, but can't. But other than that, we don't take a portion of your funds, and you build your goal as a wish list. So we didn't call it a wedding registry. Not everyone wants to get married in a doublet.
I mean, you're kind of getting married to the movie for a little bit.
You are, that's true. And you're married to all your producers. So
yeah.
Just contract
keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Contracts keep friends.
Yes, they do.
Keep friends. So you build your crowdfunding goal by building out your wish list, the individual items that you're going to talk about. And then on the platform, people can contribute money towards those items, or if they have it, they can loan it to you directly. And that comes out of your that counts towards your crowdfunding goal. So if it's like, oh, we need a Alexa kit, and somebody's like, I've got one that's not working, I will loan it to you. That counts towards your goal.
Wait, so just to clarify, if I put, hey, I need an Alexa kit and it's going to cost me $30,000 for a kit to rent, and they're like, I have it. If they say, hey, we're loaning to you, now you've raised $30,000. That's kind of the, wow, interesting. Something I wanted to point out is like when you did it before Seed&Spark was born and you did it the way that you did, was it's so smart, because that is something like I've always thought about with our productions at Lot One, is like, where can we save money by asking, our contacts what they can give us? So like, one of the sponsors of the podcast, Tourist Hat Coffee Company, they want to give us coffee for all of our productions. Okay, cool. That only saved a very little bit amount of money, but that's still a little bit amount of money now that I can spend somewhere else. And like stuff like that. So like for you to do that, like it makes sense, because when I look at crowdfunding campaigns on other platforms or not specifically Seed&Spark, but like Kickstarter, which is one of the biggest platforms that most people know, it's like, okay, I'll give you, $20 and you'll give me a digital version of a thing. But it's hard for me, even if I see a breakdown, to be like, yeah, if I give you $20, I know it's going to go towards this thing. Versus like being able to like have that tangible thing of like, oh, if I give $25, that's like a one meal for, one of the crew members for a day or something, It's
That's
really
right.
interesting.
I always give to the food funds, right? That's always my vibe, because that's what I care the most about. And people will tell you, whatever other deficits I might have as a producer, you will always eat well on my set, right? Like that's the thing I care about. So when somebody else is fundraising, like that's always where I put my money. I do think it's just important to articulate to your audience how the money is going to be spent, because making a movie for most audiences is a totally opaque process. And giving $20 feels really unimportant unless you can say that's a meal for a day for someone on set, right? Then it feels like you're actually doing something that is really meaningful. It also changes the way you do outreach, right? So if I know that I'm raising money for these things, I can actually really specifically tailor my outreach as a creator to my audience, saying like, I don't know, this week it's Feed the Crew week. For every $20 raised is like another meal for crew, right? It actually sort of helps make your storytelling about your project more specific, which we all know in storytelling is better.
So you saw a real issue for specifically the niche of filmmaking in crowdfunding, and you decided to fix that pain point.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we fix the pain point when we also find comprehensive distribution models that are replicable, right? So the thing that we didn't know was going to happen in 2012 when we launched was that Netflix was going to ruin the business model for film and take everybody with them. We didn't see that coming, right? And over the years, we've always had distribution built into Seed&Spark in some way or another. When we first launched, we had a TVOD, a transactional VOD platform built in where you could upload your film, set the price, and stream to your audience. And social media was so nascent back then, that was actually kind of a hard way to get people to watch things. In 2016, we built a subscription streaming platform that was built in. And then we were selling subscriptions directly to everybody who was backing projects, right? And we were building up a subscription base. But by 2018, every single Hollywood studio had built their own streaming platform, unless you had billions with a B, billions and an S. You weren't going to compete in streaming. We decided to pivot to this workplace revenue stream because what we were hearing from creators was by 2019, more or less, creators were like, okay, I can raise money on Seed&Spark. I can go to a major festival. I can get a decent distribution deal. And then I am marketed on social media and I am streamed on streaming platforms and I am delivered like a heat-seeking missile directly to people who already look like me and already think like me. That's if the algorithm favors me. And so they were like, I don't make work to go right in front of people who already look like me and think like me. I'm making work to change people's minds and challenge their worldview and build empathy and, raise awareness and all of those things. I can remember exactly where I was standing when I was like, I think our creators are asking us to figure out how to deliver films to audiences at scale who do not identify as the audience for their work without using social media or streaming. And I remember my stomach dropped out and I was like, I just have no idea how we're going to solve this problem. And so I went around to all the smartest people I knew. And this advisor that I've had for a long time, Wendy Smith, we were sitting at the Rose Cafe in Venice, which is the place I only get to go when my advisors are like, let me take you to lunch at the Rose Cafe in Venice. Sounds great. And she said, the workplace is the most diverse place most people are in their lives. If you could figure out a way to deliver films into the workplace, you'd really have something there. And that set us on a path. We did a ton of research with, chief people officers and CFOs and COOs and chief diversity officers and really trying to understand what were the challenges in the workplace that film might help solve. And you can imagine that 0 out of the 350 initial interviews we've done and 0 out of the 1,005 people I've talked to since then like corporate training videos or believe they are particularly effective. And so we started to see an opportunity to build experiential learning models that would solve some of the challenges in the workplace. Building soft skills is really hard. It's really hard. And they're soft because they connect heart, mind, spirit, right? That's part of what makes them. It's all that soft tissue connection. And for as long as we have been alive, we build soft skills together with stories and myths and, bedtime stories and fables. And that's how we do it. So we started curating some of the best short films that were in our sphere and building curriculum around them and selling them into workplaces. And then it started working. And so now we have built an enterprise subscription, software business. That's a very different kind of business. It's that's not a film business, but for us, it is a distribution business. And it is really about developing a really powerful revenue stream, specifically for filmmakers making shorts and specifically delivering on the impact of their films, making sure they get in front of people at scale who don't identify as the audience for their work without using social media or streaming. We are curating some of the best films that come off Seed&Spark, that come out of the festival circuit from all over the world, and building curriculum around them to solve for these challenges. So I don't want filmmakers, like, this is a whole thing, is like, you know how we're always trying to figure out, like, how do I have my day job, like my money job and my creative job? And so a lot of filmmakers are like, well, I guess like directing commercials and branded content and like industrials is fine because it pays me enough money to go do this work. What if you could just make corporate money off of the short films you were making with your heart and soul? That's our goal.
I like that better.
Really better, yes. And so, now we're paying thousands of dollars a quarter out in royalties. And instead of filmmakers making, I think at last, I haven't checked in a while because it's just too depressing, but I think like Amazon was paying like 0.0004 cents per hour streamed or something like that. It's bad. Film Forward pays between 50 cents and $2 a view of a short. So for like under 15 minutes. It's new. It's still really new. We're still building it up. We've got, I don't know, under 100 films in the Film Forward library, and we still have to build more curriculum to make more space. But that's really what we're focused on for the next couple of years. And obviously, like, continuing to build and innovate on the Seed and Spark side. But for us, like, we know how to make people good. We don't need to get better at the crowdfunding thing. Now we're really interested in the education and galvanizing the creative community for distribution.
Hey, filmmakers, Christopher here. Ever wonder what goes down when the mics are off? Dive into the Lot 1 podcast after show exclusively on our Patreon. Your VIP pass to untold stories, exclusive industry insights, and more. Get early access to our episodes, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and the chance to connect with fellow filmmakers. It's not just a podcast, it's a film fiesta waiting to happen. Ready to join the party? Subscribe at patreon.com/the Lot 1 podcast. Thanks for being a part of the journey. So all of this that you're just speaking of is still technically a part of Seed and Spark, and it's just called Film Forward. Okay. Can you give like a very like simplified like example of a film and how that translates to a soft skill that a corporation might be interested in for their training video?
Sure, absolutely. So there was a film that crowdfunded on Seed and Spark called Feeling Through. It was nominated for an Academy Award, and it was the first time a film starring a deafblind actor had been nominated for an Academy Award. It is an absolutely stunning film about this relationship that occurs just one night between a deafblind man and an unhoused young man. And this, like, yeah, it's, I cry every time, and I've seen it like a lot of times. And there's like opportunities that are made available when your short is nominated for live action for the Academy Award. But even still, I don't think those distribution deals made Doug his money back. And he has like really big vision. So he's building out the Feeling Through studio, which is a whole like disability awareness and education network working all with disabled creators. It is so cool. It's so cool. And we built it into a curricula that is 6 learning modules, and each of those learning modules has a film as a part of it called Behaviors of Belonging. And this is going to bore your audience to tears for a moment, but it is Behaviors of Belonging are the foundational skills to build a psychologically safe workplace. That means a workplace where everyone feels like their skills are valued, they can show up authentically as who they are, they can learn things, and they can challenge the status quo. That is what makes people successful at work. That's what builds innovative teams. Feeling Through specifically is actually about understanding different abilities, right? Is understanding and building awareness for what is the like broadest difference we have. I mean, 17% of Americans, and probably more post-COVID, have disabilities. And we have very little understanding of what those superpowers can actually be in the workplace. And so part of that is really about opening up a conversation across difference, right? How to have responsible conversations across difference. And that's just one in a suite of soft skills that come with that particular curricula.
It's interesting that like you're bringing all this up, because something that we've talked about on this podcast in the past a lot is like, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, is like AI and how like if it's everything's being delivered to what it is you want as a consumer, how are films made by Deji Bankole and his experiences going to be given to you that then give you a perspective different the whole point of filmmaking is to tell your story and your side of things, and it gets people thinking, or at least a hope, or opens their eyes to things that maybe they don't get exposed to on a regular basis. So like this is great, because like I never thought about training videos in that way of like, okay, you can take this story and this person's perspective and this person's story and put it in a corporate environment, and hopefully, versus a boring training video that they're just on their phone while they're doing the training video, they will pay attention to and comprehend, and maybe get a different perspective on something that will then change their opinion about that coworker or their view on things. That's such an interesting model, and the fact that you guys are doing it is just, yeah, I literally am so fascinated.
I'll just tell you, I'm really long human storytelling. So I know that the way that learning and development in corporations is going is like, there are 15 million AI companies that are trying to sort of take over this space. And at the end of the day, when I run an organization, right? I don't need everybody to think as individuals while they're at Seed&Spark. I need them to think as a collective and a collaboration. Like, right. So everybody needs the skills, like a foundational set of tools and skills that we all share, right? We need a shared codex. We need a shared understanding. And we also need a shared analysis. And you only get a shared analysis when you do something together, or you experience something together and you reflect on it. And that is actually why, if I may, the neuroscience of storytelling-based learning shows it's 22 times stickier than tell and test. This actually sort of drives me crazy. Like, we don't know why we were put on this planet. Everybody has different ideas about why we were put on this planet. Whether you think it is the dad in the sky, or, I don't know. There are lots of different theories about how we got here and why we were here. But it's pretty phenomenal that the one thing that we all share is our ability to observe, synthesize, and storytell. That's what we're for. That's what we do. That's how we're programmed. And so this idea that like a machine is going to do that better than we are, when like this, as far as we can tell, this is like our contribution to the entire planet, is to be able to observe, synthesize, and tell, is just sort of absurd to me. So like, I just feel like, good luck with your AIs doing what they're going to do. Like they don't have lived experience. And I think one of the real challenges I have with any sort of like large scale learning model is it projects the past perpetually into the future.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how we are. We change our mind. We can have radically different value systems throughout our lifetime. So I just, I'm long humans. I'm long human storytelling. We'll see if if we're gonna keep the planet inhabitable for ourselves or not. But I am long human storytelling.
What can you describe what long humans means? Just because I'm
long human storytelling, meaning like that's like an investment term, right? You would short stuff that you don't really believe in, and you.
I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
But I'm making a long-term bet. I mean, I am making a long-term financial bet on human storytelling. But
what do you feel like is the key to building a strong and loyal audience through crowdfunding?
Well, I think crowdfunding is only one part of building a strong and loyal audience. And I think a mistake that a lot of creators make is that you're building an audience as a filmmaker and not as like a curious person or a person telling a story about a certain community or idea. That like, if you look at, let's say, Justin Simeon, I think he's somebody who does this brilliantly well. He does talk a lot about being a filmmaker, but he also dives super deep on Hollywood politics, on Black cinema. And he was doing stuff on his social channels about Black cinema long before his show on Black cinema came out. He had a Twitter account called Dear White People long before he had a movie called Dear White People, long before he had a TV show called Dear White People. This is a person who profoundly understands he needs to go out and talk about the thing that is interesting to him for a while before he can then go and have a whole ass show about it. Right? And I think that's really profound, actually, is that if if you're trying to build an audience for something, you have to go talk about that thing, not the filmmaking about that thing. Another one of my favorite stories, my dear friend Alex DeBrenko made a brilliant web series called The Distance that was about a long distance relationship. And it was based on his experience with him and his now wife, Lauren. And they shot each episode twice, one from his perspective and one from her perspective. And that really made the comedic hijinks like ratchet up 10 notches. And he was in New York and she was in LA. And so there was all of that. And he was trying to build an audience for this. And he was doing the thing that I think filmmakers commonly do, and that I think for a long time we might have been advising filmmakers to do, which is like go out and like talk about how you're making the thing and the behind the scenes and the blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, like, if you're not making Star Wars or Dune, nobody cares about your behind the scenes. Do you know what I mean? You're like, this is my mom's backyard where we're filming this. This is like a location that we're borrowing. Nobody cares. So I remember he came to talk to me because he's like, I'm good at social media. He was like brilliant on Twitter, RIP. He was really struggling because it just like nothing was really getting traction as he was talking about this project. And I remember just asking him, like, where do people in long distance relationships hang out? Do they have a place they hang out online? That was the only question that I asked. I now retroactively feel very brilliant for everything that he did next, which is and researched to find out like where are people in long distance relationships online. And it turns out there was a whole like mimetic subculture on Instagram. There were hashtags and there were memes and there were what it's like when you drop your lover off and what it's like when you pick them up from the airport. Like there were just, and it was all through the lens of this shared experience. And there was so much humor in it. And he took that and ran with it. And all of a sudden his Instagram, which was getting like 20 likes from friends, like all of us being like, well, you're trying, right? They were getting hundreds of comments. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, hundreds of comments.
Yeah,
and he
that's
built
great.
this whole community so that then he started slowly teasing that this series was coming out until the point at which they were like, just give it to us already. And that is when I believe you should launch your crowdfunding campaign.
Wow.
Interesting.
That's great.
Is the point at which your crowd is like, why do I have to keep waiting? And then that series went on to be like written up in the New York Times. It was like top 10 IndieWire that year. It was nominated for a Gotham Award. But I think it's because it got the traction that it got because he really found a way to communicate with his audience. It was also really well done, right? Like at the end of the day, what you have to do is make really good stuff. Like you have to do that part. But yeah, I mean, I think it's about connecting with the audience on what they care about. And filmmaking is not usually what they care about. And it doesn't mean you don't nod to and build your own filmmaking community, but like that's actually not why at the end of the day, people are going to come en masse and watch what you're making, right? We're a really small community at the end of the day, the filmmaking community. And so if we're just talking to each other and navel gazing, which is what Hollywood loves to do, we're actually not going to get very far. You really have to connect to the people outside of your work. I did the same thing. So leading up to launching my crowdfunding campaign for RATIFIED in June, I was doing 6 weeks of video posts. And I knew I was launching on the right day because the night before we launched, a friend of mine was like, I've just been looking for how to contribute to this thing. And I went to your website and I saw that you have an International Documentary Association page. So I just put some money there. And I was like, now it's time to launch. Like the point at which people are like working hard to give you money is a good sign. And so I think you have to be willing to take on that kind of crowd engagement before the campaign. So the name of the game in any crowdfunding campaign is momentum, and you do not want to start from still on day one, right? And so everything that we teach in our crowdfunding workshops is really like how to prep for a crowdfunding campaign, right? The execution of a crowdfunding campaign is really important, but y'all are filmmakers. It's won or lost in the prep. And the same is true for crowdfunding campaign. It works just the same. And then once you build a schedule of here's how often I'm going to communicate, here are the videos I'm going to make, here are the updates I'm going to make for my page, You can build in, I really recommend people building in live events if they can, like about midway through when the momentum necessarily dips. And that can really keep you going, creating matching campaigns along the way. If somebody in your network is like, I'm going to give $500 or $1,000, be like, wait until the second week when all of the people in the first week, right? You need things, your friends and family and your crowd will procrastinate. They will procrastinate. So you have to give them incentives along the way to get on board. And when you're doing events and when you're building out the incentives for your campaign, those are really great ways to keep up the momentum. The other thing I will say quickly about incentives, because this is a big thing, nobody wears a t-shirt from an indie film that they barely know. I have one, actually. I have one that I wear all the time, and that's because it was a lucha libre film and they had sick drawings. And yes, I bought the t-shirt, and that I wear all the time. But that is the one exception in 12 years. And like, I've probably contributed to like 700 crowdfunding campaigns. I don't want your poster. With a few exceptions, I don't want a signed script. That's something that we see all the time. Like, do you see a script anywhere on this shelf? No. And like, unless you're like, I don't know, somebody famous, nobody wants your signed script. So I think the other thing about building up that momentum with the crowd is you start to have a sense of what do they want that would incentivize them and get them off the sidelines. The big thing that we recommend is that your crowdfunding rewards in between $25 and $75, which is the most common size contribution given, be personal, visual, shareable, and immediate, right? So digital rewards that you can get out right away and tag people on social media. And that starts to demonstrate your momentum, because every one of those rewards that you share and tag people know that's another contribution.
Now, are you saying something that you like, okay, someone just donated $25. I'm going to post this thing tomorrow.
Yep.
During the campaign.
Yes. And then you've already delivered that reward. So you get to the end of your campaign and you have all these rewards that you've already delivered. We knew that the thing that people cared about for RATIFIED, my film, was once people watched our pitch video, they were incensed that more people did not know these facts about the Equal Rights Amendment. So we made our digital shareable reward something called an ERA fact. And we would put your picture on it and we'd be like, Christopher wants you to know that the Equal Rights Amendment is the only constitutional amendment that has ever been fully ratified and not published to the Constitution, for example, right? So we wanted to give people easy ways to share the things that they were learning about the ERA.
Hey, aspiring filmmakers, get early access to interviews, listen to behind the scenes tea, and explore the after show magic only on our Patreon at patreon.com/the Lot One Podcast. Let's get to sipping.
So 25 to 75 is like the sweet spot. That's what you want to focus on for rewards. How important is it to have like a higher reward, like a shot in the dark? Maybe one of my rich parents will donate $5,000 to this project, and those rewards. Like, let's talk about those.
You want to have stretch rewards, and you want to make sure that what they can get from it feels really good. So at $1,000, we did a private screening. We had a couple of posters, artist prints from Chuck Sperry and Shepard Fairey that were donated to this. Those were like $2,500. And then you want to have a couple of like moonshot rewards that I think are really important. And also think about, is there a reward we might be able to give to a business that would have $5,000 to sponsor this film and get XYZ? So if you're filming in a specific community, for example, could be really interesting to offer something. And then you go out and you sell that reward, right? You go out to those businesses and you're like, we've got this thing going on. It's only this much time. If you want to get involved, you have this period of time to get it. Here's where we will take your money. Thank you very much.
What for you is some of your like the most successful campaigns that you really enjoyed watching happen?
Oh gosh, I feel like Gab Bottoni, who is our crowdfunding specialist, would answer this question so much better than I could, because like I don't get to just watch campaigns roll. Like,
yeah,
it's like
sure.
It's pretty boring, and like mostly it's like involving investors and business development. So I feel like I'm not the best person to ask. I will say that last year we had a campaign called Intervention Film, and I think they're Instagram handle is Intervention Film 23, because it was like they were filming in 23. They did one of the best like audience engagement campaigns I've ever seen. And they're a comedy duo, and they're very, very good at improv. And so they just did so much fun stuff. Like they went online during their campaign and like openly challenged other comedy duos. They were like, Duplass brothers, like, we challenge you to whatever, just hoping it would get to them. And I think that kind of engagement makes it really, really fun for your audience. Then a really interesting thing happened, which is they finished crowdfunding. They raised a bunch of money, like I think like $75,000 or something like that. But then the strikes happened. And so then they used this handle where they had built up quite a following to explain to people how we were still making an independent film during the strike. And so then they became a window in for people who were like, I hear, but I don't know anything about what's happening. What is the experience like? What does it mean? So, I mean, that's the other cool thing is like, once you build up this kind of relationship with your audience, it's not about just one thing. It can become about a lot of things because we all contain multitudes. So that's one that really sticks out in my mind. So I think the thing to remember is that lots of people are going to see this campaign, not just people who can give $25. And you really do want to articulate why this film is important and why this film has an audience, because an investor might be watching also. So the money that you raise from a campaign does not start and stop in those 30 days. We raised an additional $50,000 from a high net worth donor during our campaign. It basically doubled. So we raised $100,000, and it was like, instead of the 46, whatever that we raised in the campaign. And I had been trying to get a hold of this woman for 7 years. Like I reached out to her the first year we were making it, and she was sort of like, la da da. And like, we were finally towards the end, and I sent her the campaign and the first act, and she was like, I'm in, And so I really do think you have to understand that the momentum that you're building for the campaign is not just for the money that's being raised there. It's like a whole universe of crowdsourcing that you're going to do during that time.
I know that we're getting close to the end. The good thing is that we're going to be on the after show talking about more stuff. So I'm stoked about that. Before we get over to there, Chris has a very important special question.
Very important special question. You ready? If you had one piece of advice for anyone who is trying to crowdfund on Seed&Spark, or just crowdfund in general for a short, maybe a web series, whatever it is, what would that one piece of advice be?
Crowdfunding is not about the money. A really good crowdfunding campaign is an expression of community care. So if you can really demonstrate how much you listen to and care about your audience through the crowdfunding campaign, if you can really demonstrate how thoughtful you're being to all of the stakeholders in your community, whether that's your cast and crew and the platform that you can give them through a great crowdfunding campaign, to the characters in your movie, or the story that you're telling, or the community you're telling the story about, if you can really leverage every single element of your crowdfunding campaign to demonstrate your care for the community that you are serving, you will be incredibly successful.
Mic drop moment right there. Thank you so much for being on the show. Very, very cool. And I learned a lot. I'm still sort of processing all the information. For the people who want to sort of know more about what you have going on, where can people find you?
At Seed&Spark, across the channels. And then at Ratify the Film is where my movie stuff is happening. If you want like a super advanced behind the scenes and you care about bending the arc of technology towards collective good, you can go to m.otherboard.org and give us your email address, and we will send you stuff forthwith.
Nice. That's something I want to talk about in the after show too. But thank you so much, Emily, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
An honor to have you. And we'll see you in the after show.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.
And that's a wrap for today's Lot 1 podcast. Huge thanks to our sponsor, Tourist Hat Coffee Company. Remember to use the discount code LOT1BOGO for your exclusive buy two, get one free deal. Again, discount code is LOT1BOGO, L-O-T, the number 1, B-O-G-O at checkout for your exclusive deal. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed that episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast, and leave a review and share it with your best shark buddy. It really helps others find us somehow. Big shout out to our producer, Mina Vazarian, and our editor, Carlos Luna, because they're pulling the puppet strings and we're just out here dancing. You know, they're really swell. If you're not a part of our exclusive Patreon community yet, head on over to patreon.com/the Lot 1 podcast for early access and bonus content like the after show. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to our incredible Patreon supporters because your backing keeps the Lot 1 podcast lights on. Connect with us on Instagram and TikTok at the Lot 1 podcast for behind the scenes content and updates. Guess what? We're now accepting listener mail. So if you got any questions for us or our guests, drop us a line. Also, if you're interested in finding out more about Lot 1 Productions and all we got going on over there, check us out at lot1productions.com. That is lots, L-O-T, number 1, productions, you know how to spell that, .com. Until next time, folks, keep those creative fires burning, dream big, and remember, the filmmaking journey is a ride worth taking. Don't get replaced by AI, and we'll see you next week.